Blood pooled across the stone floor as Shiromi sat frozen against the wall, watching enormous jaws crunch through something unseen. She had trained to be a summoner capable of defeating the Demon King, yet nothing prepared her for the scene now unfolding before her eyes. Weeks earlier, she stood before the Academy's grand hall, staff raised high, chanting the summoning verse she had memorized. Confidence radiated from her as she called out to whatever creature waited beyond the veil. Light exploded from the summoning circle, forceful enough to rattle the courtyard. When the glow faded, only a single flower rested where a familiar should have appeared. Undeterred, she leapt with joy, clutching a bowl and declaring herself a true summoner at last. Tears of relief mixed with her laughter as she celebrated the small victory. A sharp smack to the head interrupted her celebration. Her classmate demanded to know whether she was still dreaming, snapping her back to reality. Nearby students mocked her openly, sneering that someone worthless could only ever summon something equally worthless. Shiromi shrank under their stares, humiliated. Refusing to be discouraged, she insisted her latest flower proved genuine progress, boasting that summoning something greater was close at hand. A masked figure and his companions challenged her outright, taunting that she didn't belong among real summoners and offering to battle her alone. Onlookers gasped in confusion, stunned by the sudden hostility unfolding in front of them. Elsewhere, Professor Reagan coldly dismissed a subordinate's objection, declaring that incompetent allies had no place in battle since the Demon King's forces were already marching. Frustration boiled over as one summoner struck another, demanding she wake up and remember why she stood there at all. A voice echoed through the chamber, addressing her directly by her full name and declaring that she was destined to save the world. Her friend reminded her that tomorrow's makeup exam was her final chance, expressing unwavering faith that hidden potential lived inside her. 10 years earlier, the Demon King's army had emerged from the Dark Sea, spreading destruction across the land. Winged monsters tore through burning cities, leaving ruin in their wake as humanity's defenses crumbled. Trembling, Shiromi listened as leaders insisted that humanity's only hope lay in uniting as one force against the invasion. Arcanity Academy answered the call, gathering every student with arcane talent to prepare them for the coming fight. Encouraged by a friend's praise, she reminded herself that even a small spark of magic mattered, vowing not to give in to despair. A prophetic voice began speaking of humanity's plea, only to glitch and cut out before finishing its message. Back in the present, a colossal shark burst from the summoning circle with a deafening roar, leaving Shiromi paralyzed with terror as she realized exactly what she had called forth. A massive shark tore through crashing waves toward a screaming woman, while elsewhere its jaws closed around a helpless swimmer as chaos consumed the shoreline. Beachgoers scattered in panic as the creature surged through the surf, and one man admitted with a grin that despite how ridiculous it all seemed, he couldn't look away. Shiromi's eyes spun with dizziness as she watched the same shark snap its jaws around a small cage, devouring it whole. Terror gripped her as those same teeth loomed inches from her face, leaving her stammering in disbelief at what she had summoned. Back at the academy, she stood ready before the crowd, reminding herself that this exam was her final opportunity to prove herself once and for all. She declared boldly that even someone like her could summon the strongest familiar and save the world, insisting this achievement would finally give her something to be proud of. Steadying her breathing, she focused her mind until it felt as calm as the ocean, channeling every ounce of concentration into the ritual. A memory of yesterday's shark flashed violently through her thoughts, rattling her composure at the worst possible moment. The summoning circle released only a small fish flopping weakly on the ground, nowhere near the powerful familiar she had promised. Laughter erupted from the crowd as her classmates mocked the pitiful result, deepening her humiliation in front of everyone. The professor's disappointment cut deeper than the students' taunts, while onlookers continued jeering at the small, harmless catch. A sharp slap landed across her cheek as the professor coldly called her a disappointment, silencing her protests instantly. Harsh words followed, telling her she wasn't cut out for this life, and should return to being a simple fishmonger, leaving her in tears as she accepted she might truly lack any talent. Nearby, Professor Reagan and Demon Lord Aprilly exchanged affectionate words, oblivious to the students demanding they focus on defeating the Demon King's army instead. Confusion spread as the small fish vanished without a trace, and Reagan coldly instructed Shiromi to gather her things, promising to contact her later. Suddenly, something enormous erupted from beneath the ground, swallowing a nearby student whole in a violent burst of motion. Witnesses screamed that the creature had devoured their classmate, watching helplessly as the ground itself seemed to swallow him. Panic spread further as another figure was dragged into unseen jaws, his screams cutting short as the beast claimed its next victim. Students pointed frantically, realizing the shark was somehow swimming beneath solid ground itself, striking without warning from below. A chilling voice announced the activation of a skill called Couple Killer, sending Shiromi into uncontrollable rage as she lunged forward, deaf to the desperate pleas of those trying to stop her. A furious mob surrounds a cloaked figure and his companions, accusing them of butchering innocent lives without mercy. Trembling with rage rather than fear, one bystander demands an answer, while the summoned beast beside them reveals its title, Shark Killer, and a level reading of 893 leaves everyone speechless. Classmates mock the group's earlier failure, insisting true knights never cower before a challenge. A white-haired girl with dark wings clings to a bespectacled boy, shouting that their shared duty was always to crush the Demon King's forces, though her words draw only stunned silence. Confidence swells among the students as their celebrated leader Harry Stu claims he has already studied the enemy's every move. Cheers erupt around him, classmates hailing him as the legendary survivor destined to reincarnate and finish what heroes before him could not. Formations spread across the school floor as fighters of varying levels brace themselves. Their commander orders everyone to strike together the instant the enemy shows itself, certainty radiating through the ranks. A colossal wave tears through the hall, shattering the plan in seconds. The white-haired girl screams for everyone to flee, realizing too late that their strategy will never hold. 3 monstrous shark heads burst upward, jaws gaping, tentacles thrashing violently through the wreckage. The beasts roar in unison, their teeth glistening as chaos spreads through the collapsing structure. The bespectacled boy freezes, calling it a monster unlike anything he has ever witnessed. Harry Stu is seized mid-boast, his body vanishing between crushing jaws as horrified classmates scream his name in disbelief. Survivors scream for everyone to open fire, unleashing everything they have toward the towering creature. Attacks strike the beast's hide, yet it barely flinches, absorbing blow after blow with ease. A sweeping tentacle assault flattens the arena floor, sending fighters scrambling for cover. Rubble buries what remains of their formation as a lone survivor stares in shock at the destruction. Students bolt in every direction, screaming as jaws snap inches behind them. A tentacle lashes out, snatching a fleeing classmate from the ground before anyone can react. More students are dragged upward, shrieking for help as the creature devours them one after another. A girl weeps over her ruined dream, the ambition to become a summoner and save the world crumbling with her. Flesh tears and bone crunches as the massacre continues unabated across the ruined hall. A lone boy questions how their mission collapsed so completely, watching the beast's jaws close in. Blood pools across the checkered floor as a girl collapses, whispering a final question no one remains to answer. Shiromi shrieks as the massive shark looms over her, its snout affectionately nuzzling against her trembling body despite the terror written across her face. The beast's jaw closes around her, dragging her off her feet as she screams for it to let go, panic overtaking every word she manages to choke out. Gasping for breath after the ordeal, she spots her professor lying dazed on the ground and calls out to him in disbelief, unsure if he witnessed what just happened. Desperate, she begs Professor Reigen to save her before the creature finishes the job. He admits his own failure, confessing he misjudged her, and could only watch helplessly as his other students perished one after another. Rage replaces her fear as she rounds on him, accusing him of being nothing more than a spy working for the Demon King, vowing that humanity would never forgive such betrayal. She swears vengeance, promising to hunt him and every demon like him to the ends of hell, declaring she would show him a nightmare worse than anything he had ever inflicted. Sprinting toward the towering academy walls, she wails apologies to no one in particular, questioning aloud why such misfortune keeps finding her. The shark surges forward once more, jaws wide, closing in on her with unsettling affection despite its monstrous size. Reflecting on it all, she admits the path ahead was never the adventure she had once dreamed of. Instead, it became a nightmare shaped by teeth and terror, marking the true beginning of her journey. Explosions tear through the mountains as Shiromi flees across a battered trail, screaming for whatever pursues her to stop. Catching her breath, she introduces herself with forced cheer, declaring proudly that she is Shiromi Lovecut Toothrough, a 14-year-old summoner with big dreams. Rubble rains down as a massive jaw opens behind her, and she admits that her old dream of saving the world now feels like an impossible climb. Sobbing among the wreckage, she begs the creature to leave her alone, calling the whole situation terrifying beyond words. The shark tries to shake her off gently, insisting it's busy, and asking her to go play elsewhere, only for her fear to melt into forced politeness as she pats its snout. Affection overwhelms logic as the beast nuzzles against her, its enormous head pinning her down while she stares blankly, caught between horror and disbelief. Its jagged teeth hover inches from her face, and she wonders aloud why such misfortune keeps finding her. Reflecting on the disaster, she reveals that summoning this creature by accident cost her entire class and shattered every hope she once carried, naming her unwanted companion Shark Killer. Wandering beneath a pale moon, she admits she has nowhere left to go and no idea what comes next. Hunger and thirst gnaw at her as she collapses, confessing she was too focused on escaping to notice where her feet had carried her. Frustration boils over as she snaps at Shark Killer for causing all of it, then breaks down crying for her parents, calling herself an idiot. A faint light catches her attention through the trees, drawing a startled sound from her. Sparkling with relief, she spots a distant camp and cries out that she has finally been saved. She waves and calls out desperately, grateful that her luck hasn't completely run out. Practically glowing with joy, she begs the strangers for food, admitting she barely escaped with her life. A gentle voice reassures her that the ordeal must have been frightening, and tells her she can finally rest. The moment shatters as towering skeletal demons loom over her, one mockingly offering a shoulder to cry on. Her eyes go wide with dread, as a monstrous growling face fills her vision. Realization crashes over her as she recognizes the Demon King's army, horrified that she wandered straight into their camp. Fellow captives cry out for rescue, pointing her toward salvation as one desperately calls her over, sealing her into a fight she never wanted. A dragon-like demon lunges forward with jaws snapping, silencing whatever protest had been building. Shiromi trembles at the sheer force on display, admitting she never realized the Demon King's army held such terrifying strength while captured villagers cower under arrow fire. The lead demon boasts about being in charge, warning the so-called heroes to stay silent unless given permission, drawing nervous chuckles from its subordinates. It taunts her further, claiming any fool who thinks they can defeat the army is destined to become a slave, gesturing toward the bound prisoners as proof. Without warning, a small shark splashes down out of nowhere, startling the demon holding its clawed hand out toward her. Confusion ripples through the camp as everyone questions what a shark is doing there, while Shiromi realizes with relief that her familiar has finally shown up. She pleads with Sharkkiller, insisting he's strong enough to save her, and ordering him to take the demons down. Instead of obeying, the shark simply shakes side to side, ignoring her command entirely as the demons mock her apparent helplessness. Growing desperate, she shouts for him to listen and fight, but the collar around his neck stays locked, refusing to respond to her authority. The demons ridicule her further, mocking summoners as cowards who hide behind creatures instead of fighting themselves, calling the whole class of mage pathetic. One demon lunges with a killing blow, and pain rips through her as claws connect, forcing a scream from her lips. Fire and heat sweep across the battlefield while she curls up in pain, recalling a lesson that controlling a familiar comes down to a single crucial factor. The memory shifts to her professor, radiant and insistent as he raises a finger and declares that love is the answer. He continues lecturing the class, explaining that summoners must study their familiars closely, learning what brings them joy and what stirs their anger. He warns that neglecting this bond risks a familiar's refusal to fight, or worse, turning against its own summoner entirely. Snap back to the present, she realizes with horror what showering affection truly demands of her, sweat breaking out across her face. Sharkkiller emerges from the ground, and she reminds him bitterly that despite everything, he already devoured her entire class and ruined her dream. A supposed hero shouts for the shark to face him properly, while demons threaten to slit the captives' throats unless the fighting stops. Terror floods her expression as one creature accuses her of spying for the Demon King, though she insists desperately that she has nothing to do with them. Overwhelmed, she recalls her original purpose, crying out that she only became a summoner to help people in need, just as a sharp slap interrupts her spiraling thoughts. Kneeling before the shark, Shiromi studies him closely, taking her first real look into his eyes instead of turning away. Softly, she offers an apology, admitting how sorry she feels for everything she has put him through since their meeting. She reflects that anyone would panic if suddenly summoned into a strange world and forced into battle, confessing she never even looked him in the face until now. Nearby captives urge her onward, insisting that even though they can't fight themselves, people are suffering and she might be the only one able to help. She turns back to Sharkkiller, begging him to give her a chance to understand him properly and asking if he would make an exception just this once to fight by her side. A sudden flash lights up her expression as the shark reacts, shaking with what looks like unexpected excitement rather than defiance. Realization dawns on her, and she understands what he actually wants isn't obedience but headpats. Energized by the discovery, Sharkkiller rockets across the battlefield with tremendous force, closing the distance toward the enemy camp. Startled by his sudden charge, she calls out his name in surprise, though her protest carries a hint of both alarm and pride. A blinding burst of light erupts as he crashes into the demon ranks, scattering them before their leader can react. One demon sneers, calling him a sitting duck as it prepares a counterattack mid-flight. Fire consumes the sky as the demon boasts about roasting shark fin in the mountains, certain victory is already his. Tentacles lash out violently, smashing through the flames and proving the boast premature. Panic spreads through the demon ranks as their lieutenant is dragged away, the survivors screaming that retreat is their only option. Fleeing further, the demons warn each other that humans have somehow gained control over a true freak of nature, insisting the news must reach every troop. Amid the chaos, Sharkkiller nuzzles against her affectionately, drawing a startled squeal despite the battle still raging around them. She stares in disbelief, praising his performance while noticing something unexpected brushing gently against her hand. Peace settles over the forest as she sits beside him, patting his head with quiet contentment. Warmth fills her voice as she admits she may have misjudged him completely, thanking him and expressing new hope that together they might actually save the world. The rescued villagers gather around her, relieved and grateful, welcoming her warmly as the summoner who saved them all. Shiromi bristles at the so-called hero, warning him not to get cocky, while he snaps back that he's the legendary hero who could have easily freed himself without her help. A campfire crackles into embers as he demands silence, insisting their reputation depends on nobody ever learning that the demons managed to capture them. Turning her attention back to Sharkiller, she strokes his head and admits she's beginning to understand him better, brushing off the group's disdain and declaring she feels genuinely happy despite everything. Reflecting quietly, she realizes she once believed herself completely alone in the world, only to discover that wasn't true after all, a small smile spreading across her face. Elsewhere, two pairs from the group grow close, warmth passing between them as affection blooms unexpectedly among the rescued survivors. Delighted by the sight, she calls out to Sharkiller with a playful greeting, joking that it's a bit late to properly introduce herself, only for a piercing scream to cut through the night. Blood stains the water as Sharkiller rises with something caught between his teeth, and Shiromi's face freezes in horror at what she has just witnessed. Shiromi gradually opened her eyes beneath a wooden ceiling. The air smelled slightly of herbs and warmth. Puzzled, she raised her head, realizing she wasn't underwater or in fight anymore. Someone advanced cautiously. An aged leader and his wife welcomed her gently, explaining she had been discovered unresponsive near the stream. Thankful and famished, Shiromi consumed the meal before her, each mouthful renewing her energy and peace. The pair grinned fondly as she ate continuously, comforted that their unforeseen visitor had endured the tempest. Shiromi apologized for her feasting, cheeks reddened in shame, while the settlement leader chuckled gently in reply. As she described her experience, recollections of roaming through hills and hunger-filled nights returned bitterly in her thoughts. Abruptly, a terrible recollection returned: blood, cries and corpses ripped asunder by the gigantic beast she once controlled. Her shaking hand clutched the cup firmly as she recalled fleeing the turmoil brought by her conjured shark. The pair shared nervous looks, confused by her remarks, unaware that the ocean monster might trail her yet. Shiromi almost dropped her cup when the leader gestured outside. Her shark partner was frolicking with kids. To her surprise, Same looked thrilled, its flippers fluttering as it welcomed her with fondness. She rushed forward, alerting everybody of its peril, while the locals misread the creature's bellow for cheers. Annoyed, Shiromi reprimanded the shark for acting up, though it merely blinked harmlessly, softly biting her cuff in reply. Seconds afterward, peace returned. Cheers filled the air, and Shiromi grinned, realizing the settlement had accepted her partner. Shiromi and Same journeyed to Casa Settlement, a isolated hamlet deep within Seagale Woods, far from towns. Learning reports of the Demon Lord's forces close, she asked the leader, who described the locals' earlier hardships. He described their misery when the soldiers left them, yet their devotion kept them bound to their home. As the alerting gong sounded across the plaza, Shiromi stiffened, feeling something important prepared to happen. Locals assembled happily, applauding her title. The leader announced her their visitor of distinction for protecting their home. Shiromi thankfully gestured at the applauding locals, unaware that peril advanced beyond the village's quiet farmland. Seconds afterward, gigantic riders appeared from the woods, the Demon Lord's forces advancing toward the hamlet. The attackers smirked at her little figure, taunting her as an unfit offering for their cause. Awareness hit Shiromi like lightning. The chief's nervous smile confirmed their treachery to the enemy's troops. He quietly described their agreement with the forces, offering travelers to secure the village's persisted protection. The armored monster horseman announced Shiromi his prisoner, chuckling harshly while the frightened maiden stepped away in surprise. Other troops alerted their commander of her shark, identifying it as the beast that slain their chief. The proud commander ignored their worries, taunting Same and readying to attack, unaware of the peril ahead. With an angry bellow, Shiromi controlled her partner to assault, releasing its enormous rage upon the attackers. Same leapt forward, clamping its jaws onto the gigantic mount, rocking the earth as turmoil exploded. Shiromi gasped in amazement as Same's mouthful destroyed the creature's armored limb, shocking the foe commander. The earth shook from the collision, abandoning the surviving troops stunned in surprise at the shark's immense energy. Shiromi embraced her partner firmly, scolding it for the turmoil while the remaining foes pleaded for mercy. The leader, angry and shamed, bellowed in command for his soldiers to slay both the caster and monster. Without hesitation, Shiromi mounted onto Same's back as it rushed forward, slicing through foe lines like lightning. The leader alarmed as the foe troops, angered by their casualties, charged toward the ruined settlement home. Within, the armored beasts ripped through furnishings and walls, their talons raking in hunt of their hidden prey. They yelled commands and upended every item, becoming more annoyed as Shiromi and Same stayed secret close. Abruptly, a shrill shriek rang from the hallway, freezing every trooper with fear and uncertainty. One trooper reeled back, eyes wide with horror, as Same appeared from the darkness, jaws shining. Turmoil filled the chamber as the attackers yelled, unaware of the horror lurking in the darkness. Within seconds, blood spattered across the walls. Cries rang as one trooper disappeared without a sign. Outside, their allies grew nervous. The home fell quiet, not even the slightest motion noticed within. Anger supplanted fear as the leader bellowed for flames, commanding his soldiers to torch the building entirely. Before fire could rise, the home burst outside. Same surged through the wreckage, jaws wide and angry. Same exploded from the wreckage, shattering timber and rock as Shiromi covered herself from the scattered wreckage. Before the foes could respond, the huge shark leapt forward, devouring the front trooper in one mouthful. The rest stopped in amazement, staring at their captain's broken armor dropping to the earth like fragments. Same loomed over the battlefield, bloody and unrelenting, its snarl reverberating through the shaking settlement plaza. Shiromi held to its back as they fled into the woods, abandoning frightened remaining rear in silence. Same crashed through the buildings again, scattering wreckage while the remaining troops ran in sheer horror. Shiromi gripped on firmly, her belly churning as the shark's motions grew steadily violent and unrelenting. The surviving foes fell to the earth, shaking at the view of the gigantic monster before them. Same bellowed furiously, towering above the wreckage as Shiromi steadied herself, her resolve gradually replacing fear. The surviving troops withdrew in turmoil, their bravery broken, while Shiromi reprimanded her partner for its rash delight. The battlefield calmed as the final foe ran, abandoning Shiromi and Same encircled by wreckage and silence. Shiromi sighed in ease, thankful that they endured, unaware of the furious shouts growing rear her. The locals appeared, expressions twisted with anger, accusing her for the devastation that destroyed their houses. She pivoted, appalled, viewing the once peaceful settlement turn to wreckage under the weight of fight. The remaining demanded revenge, shouting charges as Shiromi stood stunned, realizing she was now their exile. Shiromi stood stunned as the angry locals approached, their arms lifted, and Same rumbled defensively beside her. Realizing the peril, she ran with Same through the ruins, locals shouting and throwing wreckage in sheer anger. They fled toward the wide plain, unaware of an unknown maiden observing from the darkness, smiling silently at their ordeal. In a quiet field filled with blossoms, Shiromi stood beside her partner, the conjured shark Same. The strain between them lingered in the air as she reprimanded him for the turmoil he created. Her irritation eased when a gentle light emerged among the blooms. On a large stump encircled by blossoms, a small sprite lay still. Her pinions glimmered slightly, and her breath was faint. Shiromi moved nearer, wary but intrigued. Same's eyes broadened with eagerness, his flippers flapping. Shiromi bent forward, realizing it was a real sprite, an extremely uncommon view in this realm. But delight pivoted to worry. The fairy's face twisted in agony, her form shaking slightly. Shiromi crouched, attempting to comprehend. The fairy's mouth shifted, murmuring something unclear. Shiromi could merely observe, unsure if the beast was begging for aid or alerting her of something near. Shiromi bent nearer, extending her hand to the frail sprite. The small beast moved, her faint tones shaking as she attempted to speak. Shiromi's pulse raced as she heard cautiously. Abruptly the fairy's face twisted, her form throbbed with dark power, and her pinions opened wide with a sinister light. The air grew heavy as her shape shifted into something threatening. A plume of dark dust surged forth, freezing Shiromi in place. Her arms locked, her sight dimmed, and the fairy's smile broadened as the venom took hold. The sprite hovered before her, announcing her plan to subjugate Shiromi. But from rear, Same appeared, jaws parting wide in quiet rage. The shark leapt, clamping down on the fairy's wing. Shiromi gasped in surprise as her gigantic partner rescued her yet again. After the turmoil ended, the sprite presented herself as Ector the Venom Moth sprite. Resting quietly upon the stump, she stated she merely wanted to work together with Shiromi. Shiromi paused but consented to hear. Same hovered close, wary yet quiet. Ector's voice gentled as she described that her plea was not a minor request. Her stare stiffened. She spoke of a mark someone within the Demon Lord's forces. She desired that being eliminated. To clarify her reason, Ector showed a recollection. Once, Seagull Woods had been a quiet home to fairies, filled of songs and cheers. That peace ceased when a gigantic avian dropped, scorching everything. The fairies' haven pivoted to ashes, and Ector's eyes gleamed with revenge as she finished her story. Ector's tone shook as she spoke of the assault that eliminated her home. The heavens blazed, and the emblem of the fairies' celebration pivoted to ashes. At the heart of it all stood the one culprit demon general Apapano. Shiromi blinked in uncertainty, unaware with the title. Hector gazed in amazement, annoyed at her naivety. Same cocked his head, similarly misplaced. Hector described that the demon generals were the most mighty creatures in the demon realm, leaders of the demon lord's forces, dreaded by all. Her eyes dimmed. She had long pursued revenge but missed the energy to confront such a beast. Shiromi tightened her hands, shifted by Hector's agony. Same rumbled lowly, as though vowing to guard her fresh ally's wish for revenge. With resolve shining in her eyes, Shiromi announced her backing for Hector's quest. Same jumped beside her, prepared for fight, his flippers slicing through the air like knives. Elsewhere, turmoil exploded within a dark stronghold. A wave of water crashed through the corridors, washing away armored fiends as they shrieked in horror. Among the ruins, an injured beast pleaded for mercy, its request reverberating through the scorching corridors. Blood marked the walls as silence fell once more. High above, seated on a seat of gems, the blood-winged demon general Apapanail grinned icily. Her tone carried conceit and malice as she taunted her underlings. Without worry for their pain, she questioned when her red grounds would be finished, her face empty of compassion. The demon's rule flourished on fear. Apatamal's shrill stare bore down on her shaking underlings. She commanded them to keep going, building her red grounds without rest, her tone harsh with malice. The fiends complied, their fear stronger than fatigue. With pinions spread, she flew above her work, viewing the huge field of red flowers. Her cheers rang through the heavens as she pictured her triumph before the demon lord. Far away, Shiromi, Same and Hector arrived at the edge of the vast grounds. Lines of blossoms extended continuously, a creation made from pain. Demonic laborers worked under harsh orders, their corpses frail but yet forced to work. Shiromi observed in silence, her delight fading to sadness. Rear the splendor of the red grounds lay agony, bondage and misery. Standing before the huge red grounds, Hector described that it was once the fairies' settlement. Shiromi heard silently, eyes shining with pity. She tightened her hands, determined to right what was off. Hector asked her reasons, calling her silly for aiding someone she hardly understood. Shiromi grinned slightly, confessing she had often been named an ool. Recollections rushed her thoughts, taunting cheers, unsuccessful tries and numerous errors that made her the settlement laughingstock. She recalled those isolated times, certain she had no role, observing the realm battle fights she could never enter. Then came the instant everything shifted, a glimmer of glow within her heart. For the initial time, she sensed strength, wish and a reason to keep pressing forward. Shiromi recalled the instant her secret strength was found. The locals applauded, believing she was meant to protect the realm. For the initial time, she sensed truly wanted. She made a promise under the evening heavens to guard rest and never leave anyone in need. That pledge became her guiding power. Yet the road that came was far from splendid. Her initial calling brought forth Same, the huge shark whose strength created more turmoil than rescue. Despite her attempts, defeat followed her. Now, meeting Hector, she renewed that promise, announcing her resolve to offer it everything yet again. Turning to Same for backing, she spotted his silence. His steady gaze left her nervous, as though something was deeply off. Silence lingered over the huge red grounds. Shiromi and Hector shifted warily, unaware of the peril hiding beneath the flawless scenery. Close, a pair of reckless demon troops neglected their tasks, chuckling and resting among the bushes. Their conceit covered out the sinister tremor building under the ground. A sudden quake rocked the earth. Shiromi's senses shrieked, and she yelled for Hector to get down as Same's eyes broadened in alarm. The earth exploded fiercely. From the deep emerged a gigantic shape, 3 gigantic shark heads and twisting feelers breaking through the ground with thunderous bellows. The hydra-like beast roared in rage, its many jaws biting at the heavens. The quiet grounds had become a battlefield and an omen. Same's form rushed with unrestrained power, flailing violently as Shiromi held to his fin. She yelled for Hector to hold on, unable to control the furious monster. The gigantic 3-headed shark surged over the cliff, its bellows reverberating across the region. Demonic troops below stopped in horror, identifying the beast that had once destroyed their lines. Fear opened among them as commands sounded out: stop everything and defend the red grounds at all costs. The once organized forces collapsed into turmoil. Deep within her den, Apapanail moved from sleep. The booming calls reached her hearing, her face churning from weariness to interest. Extending her pinions, she grinned icily. Believing her underlings had simply become eager laborers, she stayed unaware of the devastation approaching her threshold. Fire engulfed the once beautiful red grounds. The air was filled with smoke and ashes as Apapanail dropped from the heavens, her pinions spreading over the devastation she once named her creation. Her troops shrieked in fear, struggling to contain the flames. Apopaneel's eyes broadened in amazement, unable to comprehend the view before her. Anger destroyed her. She shrieked at her underlings, her rage reverberating across the scorching farmland. The ground she had built with conceit and malice was now nothing but ruin. Through the smoke, the gigantic shape of Same's three heads appeared, roaring with strength. Apado dove to confront it, her pinions slicing through the air. But the creature's might was immense. Its jaws opened wide, prepared to consume everything in its road. The battlefield pivoted into turmoil. Fiends battled desperately, their calls of agony misplaced beneath the bellows of the three-headed shark. Blood and flames merged as the grounds crumbled. Same unleashed his rage, smashing the earth with his feelers and sending wreckage scattered. The Red Garden's splendor was erased in seconds. From afar, Shiromi and Ector observed in horror. Ector's cheers rang as she announced the devastation, Red Ground's shark hell, while Shiromi shook at the devastation. Same's anger intensified, tossing Shiromi into the air as Ector held to her side. Shiromi struggled to hold on, the gigantic power almost immense her. Then, from the smoke and fire, Apopaneil emerged, her pinions opened wide, eyes scorching with wrath. The true fight prepared to begin. Shiromi stopped as Apopaneil's rage exploded. The demon general's eyes glowed with murderous anger, her tone reverberating like thunder as she cursed the intruders for defiling her domain. Dark power rushed around her, shaping into an enormous shadowed shape. Her presence alone made the air tremble, an immense aura that shrieked of misery and death. Ector shook beside Shiromi, the sprite hardly able to speak as she sensed the crushing pressure. Fear clawed at her heart, her energy almost gone. Desperate but shaking, Shiromi attempted to speak reason, reminding Apopaneil that the Red Grounds once belonged to the fairies. Her tone rocked, but she pressed on. Ector joined her request, extending peace, though her eyes betrayed the horror of one meeting an unrelenting beast. Shiromi nervously lifted her hands, forcing a smile as she pleaded for peace. "Violence is outdated," she announced, flashing a peace sign. Ector rang her with shaking optimism. Apopaneil's face twisted with unrestrained anger. Her tone thundered across the wreckage. This grounds had been meant as her and the demon lord's sacred sanctuary. With a shriek, she unleashed her rage. "Die, you filthy vermin," she bellowed, her pinions slicing the air as a torrent of strength exploded toward Shiromi and Ector. Frightened, Shiromi named out to her gigantic partner, Same, hoping the three-headed monster would guard them from annihilation. The gigantic Hydra shark rushed upward, roaring in defiance. The fight lines were drawn. Apopaneil against Same, the clash between divine anger and abyssal horror prepared to begin. The earth shook as the caster cried out, her tone reverberating across the battlefield. A huge shadow exploded from beneath the broken ground, a gigantic fin slicing through dust and wreckage. The summoner's pulse raced as feelers lashed outside, striking anything within reach. The creature's shape loomed over the rocky plain. Three enormous figures appeared, their jagged teeth glinting through the haze. The maiden, dwarfed by their size, observed helplessly as the feelers whipped around her, drawing the monsters toward their prey. Mouths gaped wide, revealing endless lines of teeth. The bellow of the ocean rang in their throats as they leapt forward, their hunger swallowing glow and sound alike. Dust cleared. The caster, shaking, noticed her work yet standing strong. Ease washed over her. The shark had endured, and the tide of fight had pivoted. The ocean witch Velfina, guardian of the Red Grounds, seethed as she gazed down the gigantic shark. Her pride broken, rage blazed rear her eyes, an ancient anger made of humiliation. Above the smoking cliffs, Velfina emerged into the air, pinions opened wide. Below, the young caster Shiromi and her partner Rina observed in awe as the three-headed shark bellowed, rocking the valley. Velfina tightened her hands, calling a spiraling vortex of wind. Her anger condensed into raw strength. She vowed none of her foes would leave the battlefield alive. The air howled as her tempest hit downward, clashing against the advancing shark. The earth split beneath their strength, waves of dust and power colliding in violent bursts. Shiromi held to Rina's back as the shark rushed upward, defying the tempest. Its bellow rang through the heavens, a beast's defiance against a goddess's wrath. Velfina's cheers rang across the battlefield. Strength rushed through her veins as the land's mana swirled toward her. The air itself seemed to bow under her control. She boasted of energy limitless and eternal, her eyes scorching with cruel delight. From below, Shiromi and Rina held to the back of Ector, the conjured shark. The sudden surge of mana knocked them off balance, sending Shiromi tumbling through the air. Crashing into the dirt, Shiromi winced, her wand slipping from her grasp. As she shoved herself up, Rina's harsh tone drew her attention to the glowing staff beside her. The crescent-shaped wand throbbed with unaware power, a faint hum becoming stronger. The gauge started to rise on its own, climbing earlier 38%. Shiromi's eyes broadened. Neither she nor Rina had ever seen such a reaction. Something deep within the wand was awakening. The peace after the tempest didn't final. From the scorched ground, Shiromi and Rina were caught off guard by sudden motion. Dark figures appeared from the haze, cheers reverberating through the air as talons slashed forward. 3 skeletal fiends advanced, their pinions tattered but their grins cruel. Shiromi reeled back, shaking as the monsters closed in around her. Their chief seized her by the hair, taunting her with venomous remarks. She struggled to speak, uncertainty mixing with fear as she faced their grotesque beaked expressions. Encircled and powerless, Shiromi was shoved to her knees. The fiends celebrated their capture, unaware of the faint glow pulsing rear her. The wand lay half-buried, humming with unstable power. As the creatures chuckled, the wand's light intensified, climbing earlier 58%. The earth started to tremble once more, signaling that the shark's return was near. The 3-headed shark bellowed, its shouts blending into a thunderous cry that rocked the battlefield. Shiromi, clutching her glowing wand, sensed the earth tremble beneath her. The gauge mounted earlier 70%. Something mighty was building within. She crawled forward, desperate to reach the wand as the monsters closed in. A clawed hand seized her shoulder, yanking her back before she could act. The fiends taunted her fear, holding the wand simply out of reach. Its power rushed to 80%, pulsating like a pulse lurking to surged. Close, Rina was captured, gasping for air as a demon's grip tightened. Her request for mercy twisted into a fragile bluff, hoping to buy them time. Feigning peace, Rina whispered of a secret truth about the shark. The fiends paused simply as the ground started to tremor with sinister power. The fiends tightened their grip on Shiromi, dragging her across the plain. One smirked, shouting commands to take the captives to their superior. Rear them, the wand's gauge throbbed 90% and climbing. A surge of strength split the air. Rian, filled with sudden rage, launched herself at the captors, shouting that no one would harm Hector, the shark she had come to trust. The explosion of power sent the fiends stumbling. In the turmoil, Rian seized the wand and hurled it toward Shiromi. Her tones sounded out, urging her friend to act before it was too late. The earth cracked wide. Steam emerged as Same, the gigantic shark, appeared from the crater, battered but yet alive. Shiromi's eyes broadened in amazement. Despite the damage, her conjured monster moved its presence yet again, rocking the battlefield. Velfina dropped from the tempest, encircled by towering cyclones that ripped the battlefield asunder. Below her, Shiromi stood stunned, gripping her wand firmly as flames and dust swirled around them. The summoner's bravery faltered. With the heavens collapsing, she pivoted to Rina, who hovered beside her, both realizing escape was impossible. The wand's gauge hit 100%. Glow surged from its core as Shiromi lifted it high, her tone reverberating through the turmoil, calling for Same, her gigantic partner, to awaken once more. A single eye opened within the deep of the ground. The monster moved, its stare chilly and ancient, answering the call that bound it to its master. Velfina unleashed her tempest, unaware that below her, the awakened shark was already growing, prepared to devour the tempest itself. Velfina's anger spiraled out of control, the wind condensing into a violent sphere of devastation. Her cheers rang through the tempest as strength converged, churning the air into turmoil. Then, from below, the ground cracked wide once more. Same, the gigantic shark, exploded skyward within a tornado of its own, making its bellow splitting the heavens. The tempest around it twisted and bent, drawn into the creature's enormous pull. Fangs glistened as it defied gravity, its presence immense even the divine winds. The gigantic shark emerged higher, clashing with the winged sorceress. The air shook as heavens and ocean collided in raw rage. From the earth, Shiromi and Rina observed in amazement. Their conjured monster, the shark made of the ocean, was now soaring through the heavens, a power beyond all logic. Lightning cracked across the heavens as the summoner's wand showed a fresh inscription, Same's fresh skill. Sharknado mode. The beast's form glowed, strength spiraling around it in waves. From above, Velfina shrieked in amazement. Her domain, once untouchable, was now ripped asunder by a scattered shark. Her winds, once symbols of control, now bent to the creature's will. Shiromi and Rina observed from below, speechless. The shark flew through the heavens like a living tempest, its strength rewriting the laws of nature. Every witness could feel it, an instinctive alerting. This was no ordinary summon. Same had become something beyond comprehension, a predator of region, ocean, and heavens. In that instant, the legend of the ancient shark returned, a beast older than empires, dreaded since the dawn of time. The Sharknado had begun. The realm seemed to bend under the weight of logic, breaking asunder. Scholars once ignored the idea, but nature itself proved otherwise. A shark, evolved through ages, capable of conquering the heavens. Its building, glow yet unyielding, carried the recollection of ancient storms. The creature's genes throbbed with forgotten senses, awakening a truth buried in time. Now, the monster bellowed the ocean was no longer enough, nor the region. It demanded the heavens, hungering to devour the realm above and below. High above, Velfina's rage reached its peak. She assembled her winds, determined to erase the abomination that defiled her red domain. But Same, spiraling within his cyclone, rushed forward. The Sharknado twisted tighter, faster, a power of nature reborn. Heaven itself shuddered as predator met tempest. Velfina's pinions faltered as the gigantic shark's cyclone ripped through her barrier. Dust and wreckage spiraled upward, drowning out her shriek. Same leapt forward, his form coiled in the furious vortex. The earth broken under the collision, shock waves rippling through the battlefield. The air itself seemed to split from the power. Velfina gazed in amazement as the beast appeared unscathed. Its enormous jaws opened, revealing lines of teeth glinting like knives in the stormlight. Desperation flickered in her eyes. Her strength shook, but fear shattered through her anger. She yelled for the monster to stay back, knowing retreat was no longer possible. The two troops clashed once more, wind against cyclone, pinions against fin. The battlefield exploded in turmoil as Same, the scattered shark, charged through the tempest like an unrelenting god. The tempest intensified, and from its core, many sharks appeared, each one spiraling through the air like living missiles. The heavens itself seemed alive with teeth and rage. Velfina struggled to keep up, her pinions slashing through the turbulence. The sharks darted around her, their motions too fast to trail. Fear overtook her as she realized she was being hunted. A gigantic vortex formed, swallowing everything. The lead shark bellowed from its heart, an unrelenting cyclone of scales, fangs, and devastation. Then, silence. The vortex fell, abandoning Velfina suspended in the air, searching frantically. The beast had disappeared without a sign. A shadow emerged above her. The shark re-emerged from the heavens, plummeting straight down. It had employed the wind itself as a weapon. The tempest now complied its command. From the heavens, Same dropped like a comet of rage, slamming into Velfina with unrelenting power. The heavens cracked as blood and wind collided in a final, thunderous collision. Her shriek rang through the tempest. The once mighty demon general crashed into the ruined ground, her shape twisted and broken. Even as she fell, her final remarks were laced with amazement. Defeated by a mere shark. As the dust cleared, Shiram rushed forward, tears in her eyes. Same! She yelled as the creature's huge shape disappeared beneath the waves, the battlefield eventually quiet. Then a splash. The enormous shark returned, landing clumsily atop its caster with a booming thud, hearts floating in the air. Igachin looked on, wide-eyed. They actually defeated the demon general, she whispered. The realm had simply witnessed the rise of an impossible duo. Under a quiet heavens, the battlefield lay yet. A single cross stood among the ruins, a quiet memorial to everything that had ceased there. Shiram, Same, and Ector observed in silence. The air carried the faint scent of salt and rain, the peace after turmoil. Shiram whispered, "Let's offer her an instant." As the sprite drifted toward the cross, Ector exhaled profoundly, her pinions drooping. "I simply desired to say goodbye to a depressing recollection," she murmured. Then, with a smirk, added, "But thanks for everything." Shiram blinked, touched. "Thank you, Ector, and you too, Same." The sprite grinned slightly, the burden she carried eventually lifting. Shiram's tears fell freely. "For the initial time, I rescued someone," she sobbed. Same chirped softly beside her, and for that instant the realm sensed brighter, filled of fresh beginnings. Shiram stood beneath the wide heavens, tears streaming as she recalled her journey. She had once trusted herself too faint to change anything, yet now the realm extended before her, proof that she had overcome her limits. At Tuya Lake, Shiromi jumped with eagerness as her conjured shark partner Same rolled across the grass. The sprite Lyra hovered close, amused by the girl's boundless power. While the pair splashed around, Lyra reminded Shiromi of their quest. Beneath the peace ground, something huge moved, sinister flippers slicing through the water, signaling peril. Seconds afterward, Shiromi struggled ashore, coughing water while Same flopped beside her. Lyra crossed her arms, unimpressed by her summoner's lack of swimming skill. Shiromi wiped her tears, realizing their weakness. Afterward, they learned of the Gurosaurus, a gigantic beast terrorizing the lake. Locals alerted everybody to stay away, yet Shiromi stubbornly vowed to face it, believing Same could aid. Lyra sighed in amazement at their silly bravery. As Shiromi encouraged her shark, Same merely rocked its head nervously. The fight against the Gurosaurus had yet to begin. Lyra, the sprite, grew impatient with Shiromi's carefree attitude. Annoyed, she resolved to hunt the heavens herself, abandoning Shiromi and the cheerful shark Seimei rear on the lakeshore. As Lyra flew higher, Shiromi observed her disappear into the clouds. Despite Lyra's harsh remarks, Shiromi sensed a deeper sadness beneath her friend's chilly face. Drifting above the lake, Lyra's thoughts dimmed. She asked why she stayed beside humans after losing her kin. The recollection of her fallen friends lingered like an unhealed wound. Abruptly, the quiet lake exploded. A violent column of water shot skyward, rocking the earth and scattering waves across the shore. From the roaring spray, a gigantic figure appeared, the Gurosaurus. Lyra's eyes broadened in surprise as she realized the monster had awakened, and the true fight at Tuya Lake prepared to begin. The fight at Tuya Lake reached a standstill. Lyra observed the huge form of the Gurosaurus collapse into the water. Still, for an instant, she considered the peril was over. From the shore, a confident young man emerged, Talon Narok. With a single blast of power, he ceased the battle effortlessly. The onlookers applauded, amazed by his immense energy. As the crowd exploded in admiration, Lyra observed silently from afar. Talon scratched his head, confused by their reactions, unaware of how much attention he'd drawn. Soon, a group of excited admirers encircled him, showering him with praise. Lyra frowned, unimpressed by the noise, already feeling conceit beneath his peace smile. Presented as the great-grandson of a legendary sage, Talon Naroka stood proudly. To everybody, he was a hero, but to Lyra, he was another unpredictable element in a realm already too chaotic. After the turmoil ended, Lyra discovered herself face to face with Talon Naroka. Flustered and teary, she attempted to apologize, overwhelmed by guilt and shame. Talon welcomed her gently, identifying her as a sprite. Lyra, nervously introducing herself as Ector, or Egg for short, attempted to regain composure, though her admiration for the hero was clear. As Talon's admirers encircled him, Egg's irritation flared. She alerted him about trusting humans too easily, but her remarks were covered by the crowd's praise and fondness. Taunted by the rest, Egg's temper emerged. They teased her age and taunted her serious face, unaware of how much her pride stung beneath her fragile appearance. Annoyed and flustered, Egg flew off above Tuya Lake, muttering complaints. Below, cheers rang, a mix of turmoil and peace in a realm that never seemed to rest. Alone by the lakeside, Egter quietly drew a little blade. Her face was peace, yet a peculiar power throbbed around her pinions. She dipped the blade into the water, her eyes chilly and steady. Droplets fell, rippling across the lake's ground as faint whispers rang in her thoughts. Her smile twisted slightly. She muttered about the difference between saints and fools, one bringing delight, the other devastation. A chill opened through the air. Meanwhile, the rest played in the water, chuckling and competing for Talon's attention. Their carefree power clashed against the quiet tempest brewing close. Talon discovered himself caught between admirers, unaware of Ector's becoming detachment. As cheers filled the lake, her stare pivoted distant peace, but shadowed by something unspoken. At the lake's ground, the atmosphere grew nervous. Two girls spotted peculiar ripples near the floating dock, the water shifting unnaturally as though something moved below. Interest pivoted to fear when bubbles exploded fiercely. One maiden yelled in alarm as the disturbance deepened, realizing too late that someone was sinking beneath the waves. With a thunderous splash, the ground split wide. A huge shark surged upward, its flippers shining in the sunlight. Atop it stood Shiromi, triumphant and fearless. The spectators shrieked as the shark leapt again. Water and blood exploded together, the delight of seconds before supplanted by horror and amazement. Calls filled the air as remaining scrambled to shore. The word shark rang across the lake, spreading horror through everybody who had come to enjoy the quiet day. Fear opened across Tuya Lake as remaining shrieked for aid. The water churned fiercely, and calls of shark rang among the swimmers, amazement mixing with fear. Below the ground, figures kicked desperately, their motions frantic and uncoordinated. Darkness loomed beneath them, gliding nearer through the murky deep. A dark fin sliced upward. With a bellow of water and blood, the gigantic shark exploded again, its jaws tearing through the lake as turmoil unfolded. On the shore, Talon Narok observed the fear. His face stiffened as awareness hit this was no ordinary beast. His partner yelled, demanding action. Peace yet resolute, Talon moved forward. The air shifted as strength assembled around him. Sorry to keep you lurking, he stated firmly. Leave the rest to me. Talon stood atop the water's ground, his cloak whipping in the wind as power assembled in his hand. The crowd rear him observed with awe and ease. He chanted a spell, calling a radiant circle of glow. A huge wave of strength exploded from beneath him, rocking the lake and blinding everybody close. The glow eased, abandoning silence. Talon lowered his arm with a confident smile, unaware that something yet moved below. From the water's deep, the enormous shark surged upward again, its jaws wide and angry. Talon's peace face stopped as the monster leapt toward him. The monster's attack sent him scattered, blood splattering across the shore. Surprise opened through the crowd as the hero fell, his fight with the shark far from over. Egdare stood quietly, observing as the shark complied her command. With a faint smile, she gestured toward the frightened swimmers while the beast prowled the shore. Fear opened. One woman struggled to move, pinned by fear as Egdare's chilling remarks rang in the air, urging the monster to keep going its deadly game. The shark bellowed, lunging upward with tremendous power. Its huge jaws opened wide, scattering sand and cries alike across the beach. Without hesitation, it assaulted again. The air filled with horror as the beast ripped through its victims, while Egdare observed with emotionless eyes. Close remaining ran toward a carriage, desperate for protection. But even as they rushed, the tremors beneath their feet reminded them there was nowhere truly safe from the shark's hunger. The blond man insisted the carriage was safe, boasting of its reinforced magic. Desperate and alarmed, the rest came his lead, clinging to a fragile wish. Their wish broken as the shark exploded from the sand, crushing the carriage in a single attack. Cries filled the air while turmoil destroyed the shore once more. Meanwhile, Talon writhed in agony, his earlier confidence gone. His magic faltered as reality hit the promises of invincibility were nothing but lies. Rocking and bleeding, he forced himself to stand. Calling himself a hero, he took one unsteady step forward, refusing to surrender despite the fear gnawing at him. Before he could recover, the earth shook again. Emerging from the lake came a fresh horror, the twin-headed monster, Gururosaurus, drawn by the scent of devastation. Talon, bloody but unyielding, stood against the roaring lake. With a strained tone, he named out to the beast beneath, awakening the gigantic shark yet again from its sleep. From the deep, the shark appeared, merely to meet the stare of another horror, the two-headed Gururosaurus. The air grew heavy as both predators locked eyes. In an moment, they clashed. Waves emerged fiercely, rocking the ground as teeth and scales collided. Talon stood amidst the turmoil, riding the tempest of their fight. The shark leapt with feral rage, forcing Talon to leap aside. Water sprayed around him as the creatures ripped into each other, neither willing to submit. Below the ground, the gigantic duel persisted. Their gigantic forms twisted and circled continuously, bound by hunger, anger, and the pledge of more blood to come. As the sun dipped rear the hills, a maiden sat by the quiet shore. The fight had ceased hours ago, yet neither the sprite nor the shark had returned. Worry filled her heart. She paced along the sand, calling their names, fearing the worst, that both had been consumed by the monsters hiding below. Then, with a joyful splash, the waters exploded. The little shark jumped from the lake, came by the sprite, both unharmed and cheerful, as though nothing had happened. The maiden rushed to them, overwhelmed with ease. The sprite smirked confidently, announcing she would enter their next adventure. The maiden blinked in surprise but grinned. Together they chuckled as the shark playfully circled them. Peace had returned at final, though faint ripples in the lake hinted that peril might soon resurface. Far from the tranquil shores, a battalion of soldiers prepared for an incoming threat. The air grew tense as thunder rumbled across the hills. From the heavens dropped a skeletal horseman engulfed in blue fire, crashing through their formation with terrifying speed. His cheers rang across the cliffs. The soldiers rallied in desperation, forming lines rear their shields, vowing to hold their earth. Yet the horseman merely smirked before releasing a fiery attack. A blazing wave ripped through their defenses, sending men screaming into the air. The ground scorched under his strength, and their bravery faltered. As the dust ended, the horseman announced himself the flame-wheel demon general, Zeldon. Amused by tales of a mighty shark, he vowed to hunt it down, seeking a worthy confront to his infernal might. Shiromi, the young caster, arrived at the edge of the royal capital, Yeopong. Her partner, the magical shark Same, hovered beside her as a little sprite guide gestured toward the huge city walls. The golden banners fluttered over the stronghold, signaling their long-awaited destination. Eagerness filled Shiromi as the trio advanced the bustling capital. Streets extended far and wide, filled with merchants, travelers, and townsfolk. The view of tall spires and busy markets moved a mix of wonder and nervousness within her. From a hill overlooking the city, the vast view of Yeopong unfolded, its castle towering above neatly arranged houses. It was the pride of the Yeop kingdom, a beacon of civilization and trade. Shiromi wandered through crowded alleys, unable to hide her awe. Same came closely, while the sprite reprimanded her enthusiasm, drawing smiles from passing strangers. Their journey paused in the merchant plaza. With shaking hands, Shiromi gripped a pouch of coins, Unsure but eager, the sprite encouraged her, and Same observed quietly. For the initial time, Shiromi sensed the thrill of belonging to this fresh realm. Shiromi examined the reward pouch from their final quest, yet unsure about spending it. Her sprite partner, Tefana, teased her continuously, insisting she deserved something nice after defeating the fearsome Gororosaurus. After roaming the streets, they halted before a cozy restaurant named Deep Blue. Shiromi's eyes lit up as she spotted a tower of golden pancakes, her eagerness bursting forth in an omen. Within, Same munched happily on large meatballs while Shiromi savored the warm scent of syrup. Tefana rolled her eyes, unimpressed by Shiromi's simple taste. Shiromi lifted her fork proudly, announcing her delight at tasting such a legendary treat. Same persisted, eating contentedly beside her, sharing in the cheerful atmosphere. When a talking parrot taunted her humble delight, Shiromi lowered her stare but grinned softly. For someone who once had nothing, even a single pancake sensed like a dream fulfilled. Within the bustling restaurant, the head chef advanced Shiromi with a welcoming smile. Perched on his shoulder, a noisy parrot squawked about the peril of her shark partner. The chef rapidly apologized, assuring her it meant no harm. Proud of his craft, the chef prepared his signature dish, the Daddy Deluxe Special Pancake. Shiromi's eyes sparkled as the huge syrup-drenched stack was placed before her. With childlike delight, she eagerly picked up her fork. Simply as she prepared to take the initial mouthful, a group of armored soldiers surged in. One seized her roughly, slamming her face into the plate. The sweet scent of syrup mixed with fear. The soldiers identified themselves as agents of the Yup Kingdom and announced her under arrest. Same rumbled, prepared to defend her, while turmoil exploded in the cafe. As Shiromi was dragged toward the royal castle, uncertainty filled her thoughts. Her eyes broadened in surprise, unsure why the kingdom that welcomed her now treated her as a criminal. Shiromi awoke before a large crowd, her wrists bound as guards lined the plaza. Uncertainty filled her as a herald announced the arrival of the royal court. The king's advisor controlled silence, and all eyes pivoted toward the seat. From the balcony, the royal decree was proclaimed: the public execution of Shiromi Rabuka Traff. Her heart stopped as the remarks rang through the air. Bound to a wooden cross high above the applauding crowd, Shiromi shook. The people, unaware of the truth, yelled for justice. King Gadons III stood proudly, announcing her the greatest criminal in the region. His booming tone filled the courtyard with condemnation. Accused of being a spy for the Demon Lord, and of releasing a deadly shark familiar upon innocence, Shiromi's thoughts broken in amazement. Her tone shattered in silence, murmuring that it was all a lie. Across the lands of Yup Kingdom, turmoil had opened. Villages were blazed, warriors slain, and even the prestigious Castor Academy lay in wreckage. The council stated a gigantic shark was rear it all. As Shiromi stood bound to the post, the execution command was repeated. The citizens wept for fallen heroes, certain she was the cause of their pain. Desperate, Shiromi pleaded her innocence, insisting Same had emerged by accident. She had merely desired to guard the realm, not destroy it. Her calls were neglected. A witness was conjured: Miss Harime, once a follower of the fallen hero Talon Narok. The crowd whispered, identifying her face from the hero's company. Harime described a grim tale. She stated Talon had battled a lake beast before being betrayed by the shark Shiromi conjured. Her allies were consumed, abandoning her the sole survivor of that bloody encounter. Tefana observed in horror as the court presented fresh evidence. The prosecutor showed a royal gold coin, claiming it once belonged to the hero Talon Narok and was discovered in Shiromi's possession. The crowd gasped in amazement. An aged man moved forward, introducing himself as the leader of Casa Settlement. Shiromi recognized his face with surprise and uncertainty. The chief's tone shook as he described how Shiromi and her shark ravaged their home. His story painted her as a beast commanding Same to destroy everything that opposed her. He stated she had threatened their lives, demanding they enter the Demon Lord's forces. When they refused, she supposedly unleashed turmoil that turned their settlement to ashes. Shiromi protested desperately, but the crowd's faith wavered. Same, unaware of the unfolding trial, happily munched close, his innocent chirps contrasting the dark charges filling the plaza. In the castle dungeon, Same consumed bowl after bowl of meal, while guards taunted it harshly. Unbeknownst to them, the dumplings were poisoned, a trap meant to eliminate the beast silently. Fear hit as the shark revealed no sign of weakness. Rather, it finished every final morsel, abandoning the guards appalled. They realized the monster had destroyed all the castle's venom stores without harm. Seconds afterward, a bellow rocked the walls. The once docile shark transformed into a furious power, bursting from confinement. Cries rang through the corridors as turmoil exploded. Back at the execution plaza, the prosecutor showed shocking testimony. Same had once slain one of the Demon Lord's generals single-handedly. The court fell quiet in amazement. The crowd gasped as awareness opened, a beast that mighty couldn't be merely evil. Uncertainty overtook anger, and whispers of doubt started to ripple through the people. The crowd's mood shifted as the king acknowledged Shiromi's victory over the demon general. Whispers pivoted into cheers, calling her a savior. Shiromi's heart swelled with ease. At final, someone trusted in her. But the king's face stiffened. He showed fresh intelligence. His own soldiers had recently been decimated by another general of the Demon Lord's forces, a terrifying being known as Flame Wheel General Zeldun. Gasps opened through the audience. The announcement broke in the brief wish that had filled the plaza. The prosecutor produced a magical projection rock to display the latest witness testimony. The image flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced woman in uniform. Her eyes carried authority and disappointment, her presence silencing the crowd. Shiromi stopped as she recognized the figure, her former instructor, Reigen-sensei. The awareness hit her like a blade. Her mentor had come forward as part of the testimony against her. The projection showed a formal statement from Reigen Kurt Pestelberg, a former instructor at the Maginity Magic School. Her tone was peace but carried the weight of authority, and the people heard in silence. Reigen described that a decade had passed since the Demon Lord's forces initially emerged. The academy had been founded to train mages who could stand against it, though wish was scarce. Among her many students, one had stood out: Shiromi Rabuka Atraf. Reigen described how the young maiden entered the school, bright-eyed and determined to aid protect the realm. Yet Reigen admitted she initially noticed Shiromi as a naive and untalented country maiden. Nevertheless, everything shifted the day Shiromi accidentally conjured a beast within the academy corridors. The scene pivoted terrible as many sharks emerged, tearing through the training grounds. Reigen's tone shook as she named it the terrifying beast shark that shifted everything. Reigen's recording persisted, her tone rocking with restrained grief. She showed that all 21 students of the Maginity Magic School had perished that day, consumed alongside their conjured familiars by the gigantic shark. Images of her fallen pupils emerged, young heroes once filled of wish and bravery. Reigen mourned them profoundly, calling them noble souls who had aspired to end the Demon Lord's rule. Her voice stiffened. She stated Shiromi's faint magic could never have produced such a beast unless she were allied with the Demon Lord. Tears streamed down Shiromi's face as the accusation rang through the plaza. Reigen, destroyed by guilt, announced she had resigned from teaching and imprisoned herself as penance. Her final request was for justice to punish Shiromi and avenge the students' deaths. Rain started to fall. The crowd, swayed by the testimony, yelled in unison. The word witch filled the air, drowning Shiromi's desperate calls for truth. Shiromi's tears streamed down her cheeks as she shrieked her innocence, her tone shaking with misery. The king and the crowd, blinded by anger and fear, neglected her calls. Torture, they chanted, their shouts unrelenting. The executioners prepared the pyre as the mob bellowed louder. Fire flickered near the stake. Among the crowd, Shiromi's partner tightened her hands, murmuring a sorrowful farewell. Simply as the flames ignited, the earth split wide with a booming crash. A huge shark exploded from beneath the platform, devouring the execution stake in one mouthful. Surprise rippled through the spectators. The king, his ministers and troops stopped in horror as wreckage rained down. The impossible had happened before their eyes. The familiar's tone sounded through the turmoil. The parrot shrieked warnings as people shrieked, "It's the motherfucking shark!" Fear exploded as the crowd scattered in every direction. Shiromi lay on the earth, yet bound, staring in amazement as her familiar, Samo, loomed over her. Ease filled her face. She trusted it had come to rescue her from certain death. The king and his advisor yelled for the guards to assault. Troops charged forward, arms drawn, surrounding Shiromi and her shark partner as fear opened through the court. Trapped and desperate, Shiromi struggled against the ropes. The troops approached, but Same's eyes started to swirl with strength, power building rapidly around it. A vortex of power exploded from the shark's form, churning the air into violent spirals. Shiromi looked up in awe as the enormous creature's shape emerged higher, breaking through the turmoil around them. With a booming bellow, Same surged into the heavens, lifting Shiromi onto its back. The maiden held firmly, calling its title as they flew above the frightened kingdom. The crowd observed in amazement as a spiraling vortex carried Shiromi and Same high above the city walls. The air swirled fiercely, lifting dust and wreckage while the impossible scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. Gasps opened among the citizens as the shark ascended higher into the clouds. Some yelled that such a thing defied reason, while rest could merely gaze in awe. Even the parrot familiar squawked in surprise at the view. From below, a student who once understood Shiromi grinned slightly, realizing that she had truly achieved the impossible. Her escape was proof that her calling strength surpassed all expectations. Shiromi held to Same, Exhilarated by their success, she had succeeded to awaken a fresh skill, allowing the shark to soar through the heavens with unrestrained strength. Far ahead, a fresh threat emerged: a demonic general riding a scorching machine, his eyes locked on Shiromi's road. The next fight prepared to begin. A gigantic figure appeared before Shiromi, its grotesque smile wide and eyes scorching with madness. The earth split beneath its arrival as it sped toward her with destructive power, abandoning trails of flames in its wake. Standing tall in skeletal armor, the beast showed itself as a fresh general of the Demon Lord's forces. Its cruel cheers rang through the heavens as it taunted Shiromi's bravery and strength. The fight exploded in the air, Sami circling to guard its master. The demon vowed to toy with Shiromi before ending her life, while she prepared to battle back against immense darkness. Turmoil exploded in Yagbong City as fire swallowed the streets. The heavens glowed red while frightened civilians ran. Rear them, a gigantic forces charged forward, scaled beasts and armored fiends crushing everything in their road. Their leader, a dark figure with pinions, rode a huge beast that bellowed through the smoke, front the invasion without mercy. Within the city's stronghold, the guards and nobles alarmed. Reports confirmed the impossible: the Demon Lord's forces had reached the heart of the kingdom. Troops scrambled to prepare defenses as gigantic generals approached, their talons slicing through rock and steel alike. At the front stood Zeldin, the flame-wheeled demon general. His scorching horns and skeletal mask reflected the inferno around him. His presence alone warped the air with heat, signaling that no negotiation could protect this city. From afar, a young hero observed the blazing battlefield. Surprise filled her eyes as Zeldin's mount exploded through the flames, a gigantic beast with lines of teeth gleaming. The monster jumped high, defying gravity, its eyes locked on the horizon as though hunting something beyond devastation. Under the filled moon, Zeldin and his feral steed flew through the evening. The hero stood stunned, awe replacing fear. The view was both terrifying and magnificent, an emblem of turmoil that was unable to be neglected, marking the beginning of a fresh war. Standing atop her conjured shark, the young caster looked down at the scorching city below. Smoke coiled into the heavens as she realized the filled extent of the devastation. Across from her stood the flame-wheeled demon general, peace amid turmoil, his skeletal armor gleaming under the firelight. The air grew tense, signaling the beginning of their inevitable clash. The demon's smile broadened. He challenged her directly, proposing a duel between him and her gigantic partner. The caster, surprised by the recognition, steadied her nerves. She had faced peril before, but this opponent carried a distinct kind of strength: rash, unpredictable, and scorching with pride. The fight started. The demon bellowed, charging forward with his blazing mount. The shark rushed beneath the caster, slicing through air and flame alike. Power crackled as the two troops collided, rocking the earth beneath them. In a surge of motion, the shark jumped skyward, churning mid-air as it avoided the demon's fiery attack. The earth split from the collision, sending wreckage scattering. The demon's eyes broadened at the sudden counter, realizing this wasn't an ordinary summoner's monster. Landing heavily, the shark rumbled, circling its prey with renewed ferocity. The caster steadied herself atop its back, her eyes fixed on her opponent. The duel had merely simply begun, but for the initial time, the demon looked unsure as the predator of another realm gazed him down. Zeldin emerged from the fire, chuckling as he named out to his opponent. The summoner's shark jumped high into the air, breaking through the clouds. The demon's eyes blazed with madness. Defeat wasn't something he accepted easily. His form radiated heat as he prepared for another attack. He accelerated forward on his fiery vehicle, slicing through the air like a comet. Sparks scattered rear him as he unleashed his next assault, channeling raw flame into a blazing chain of power that ripped through the heavens toward his foe. The caster yelled in fear, urging her shark to evade. The ocean monster twisted mid-air, but the chain came, wrapping around them in scorching loops. The heat seared through the air, and the strain of fight intensified. The shark bellowed in rage as fire coiled around its form, its scales glowing red under the pressure. The caster held firmly, shielding herself as the power throbbed tighter, threatening to crush them both. A booming snarl exploded from the shark, its anger breaking through the fire. The summoner's eyes broadened as glow and heat collided. The fight between flames and monster reached its peak, each refusing to yield to the other's strength. High above the scorching city, the shark and its horsemen plummeted toward the stronghold. The demon's command rang through the air, forcing them downward. The caster clutched firmly, eyes wide as the earth rushed nearer. Fire trailed rear the dropping monster, painting a road of devastation in its descent. With a thunderous collision, the shark crashed into the stronghold roof. Rock and wreckage burst outside as the huge form ripped through the castle's walls. Troops and civilians below stopped in surprise, staring as dust and fragments rained over the courtyard. Onlookers shrieked as they realized who had fallen. The title Shiromi opened among the crowd, mixed with fear and amazement. Amid the turmoil, allies prayed she and her conjured monster had endured the devastating crash. Outside the wreckage, the Demon Lord's forces approached. Monsters ripped through the city's defenses, immense the soldiers who attempted to hold the gates. Blood and fear filled the streets as resistance started to crumble. Within the collapsing stronghold, troops and civilians argued in desperation. Fear opened faster than the flames. Charges pivoted to shouts as everybody realized the grim truth: the foe was closing in, and the city's final defense was dropping asunder. The courtyard dropped into turmoil as troops and citizens argued, accusing one another for the city's downfall. The minister moved forward, shouting for silence. His tone cut through the noise, forcing everybody to stop. Expressions pivoted toward him, their anger gradually supplanted by uncertainty. He started to speak, his voice harsh but peace. He reminded them that the Demon Lord's forces was terrifying, but there were worse troops in the realm. He spoke of a time when even nature pivoted against them, when sandstorms swallowed armies whole. The minister's eyes dimmed as he recalled the earlier. He had seen men turn on each other in desperation, losing their sanity and humanity. Merely a few endured, carrying guilt heavier than the tempest itself. He confessed that their greatest foe had never been fiends or disasters, but mankind's own fear. His remarks calmed the crowd, replacing anger with nervous reflection. Raising his tone again, the minister urged unity. He announced that survival required cooperation, not conflict. Though escape seemed impossible, his conviction gave the people a brief glimmer of wish amid the crumbling walls. The minister's speech ceased in horror as the earth split wide beneath him. A huge jaw appeared, biting through armor and flesh in an omen. The troops stopped in horror, unable to comprehend what had happened as the ground shook under the collision. 3 gigantic sharks exploded from the earth, their bellows rocking the air. People shrieked and scattered as the gigantic creatures leapt forward, devouring everything in their road. Above them, Zeldin rode through the turmoil, chuckling as devastation opened across the courtyard. The sharks started to change, their corpses churning and merging with feelers bursting from their sides. Zeldin grinned and twisted Adnu Pishin, realizing the monster had evolved mid-battle into something far more terrifying. The mutated sharks hit again, their feelers smashing buildings asunder as troops rushed for cover. Dust and wreckage filled the air while Zeldin charged fearlessly toward the turmoil, thrilled by the escalating carnage. Within the castle walls, the king attempted to guard those nearest him as feelers surged through the building. Rock broken, and fear overtook the guards. The gigantic power had reached the heart of the kingdom, abandoning no one safe. Amid the wreckage, the caster and the king landed hard but unharmed. Dust filled the air as they struggled to stand. The caster rapidly checked the king, relieved to see him alive. The king gazed at her in amazement, puzzled by her decision to protect him. Their brief peace was interrupted by the arrival of her partner Sprite. She reprimanded the caster for rescuing the very man who had condemned her. The caster merely grinned, brushing off the strain as though nothing had happened. Seconds afterward, awareness hit her. The foe troops had encircled the city, but the back of the castle stayed clear. She yelled for everyone's attention, rallying the frightened remaining toward a single chance at escape. She urged them to flee while her conjured shark persisted, battling the demon general. Her confidence sparked wish, convincing the surviving civilians to act. Before they could move, fear opened again. Troops accused her of treachery, calling her a spy. The king silenced them, commanding the evacuation himself. Despite the turmoil, his command carried enough authority to protect lives that day. As the remaining started their escape, the king pivoted to Shiromi and expressed his gratitude. Her bravery had rescued numerous lives, and even he, once her accuser, was unable to deny her bravery. Shiromi grinned brightly, brushing aside the peril that yet encircled them. Her partner Sprite nevertheless sensed unease. Shiromi's cheerful face eased as a peculiar power throbbed close. Her calling gauge flickered to life, signaling that her beast was yet active but unstable. The indicator emerged gradually, alerting of something mighty building within. High above the castle, foe scouts dropped by parachute. They spotted the evacuation route and instantly alerted the main forces. Reinforcements started pressing, slicing off any wish of a quiet retreat. Meanwhile, Zeldin returned to the battlefield, his demonic power flaring as the mutated sharks assembled rear him. Fire and smoke came wherever he shifted, his forces regaining momentum. Shiromi looked up, realizing the battle wasn't over. The earth rocked as her shark bellowed from afar. Zeldin smirked, announcing the battle's end, and the air grew heavy, marking the start of their final confrontation. Shiromi lifted her arms as an enormous shadow covered the heavens. A mass of power and fire dropped toward the castle, rocking the earth. The power of it ripped through the air, reverberating across the battlefield like thunder. When the dust cleared, Shiromi noticed her shark lying close, shrunken and exhausted. She rushed to its side, calling its title, relieved to see it yet breath. Despite its injuries, the beast nuzzled her hand weakly, its eyes filled with devotion. Abruptly, her calling gauge started to wave uncontrollably. The strength she attempted to suppress refused to stop climbing. Zeldin emerged yet again, smiling with twisted satisfaction, announcing that their fight had merely been a warm-up. Shiromi shook as he closed in. Her partner yelled for her to stay strong, but the caster understood time was running out. The demon's cheers filled the air as the heat around them intensified. Zeldin loomed over her, his smile wide and cruel. He showed his plan to slay her instantly, discarding his earlier pledge. Fire assembled in his hands, and the final clash between caster and demon prepared to begin. Zeldin lifted his weapon high, fire swirling around him as he prepared to deliver the final blow. Shiromi stopped, knowing escape was impossible. Her thoughts raced desperately, searching for anything to say that might stall him. In an instant of fear, she blurted out a compliment about his steed, praising how cool it looked. Her tone shook, but the remarks fled with all the bravery she could muster. The demon halted mid-swing, momentarily stunned by her outburst. Shiromi's fear pivoted to uncertainty as Zeldin asked her remarks. His voice shifted, interest replacing anger. He demanded to know what she discovered so impressive, forcing her to clarify through shaking mouth. Attempting to stay alive, she nervously listed everything she could think of: its eyes, its energy, and the way it flew through fire. Each hesitant word merely drew him deeper into her flattery. To her surprise, Zeldin chuckled a booming, genuine laugh. He announced her answer the best he had ever noticed. For a fleeting instant, the battlefield grew quiet as a peculiar bond formed between the caster and the demon. The king led his troops through the crumbling streets, urging them to move faster. Wish flickered in his eyes as he trusted they could eventually escape the besieged city and reach protection beyond the walls. But as they pivoted a corner, their road was blocked by an entire battalion of the demon lord's forces. At its heart stood a towering demon general, mounted on a gigantic monster, his soldiers lurking in organized formation. The troops stopped in fear. The enemy's taunting cheers rang through the streets. Turmoil exploded as the fiends leapt forward, their talons tearing through armor. Even the king discovered himself struggling to defend against the assault. Among the turmoil, a familiar figure emerged, Egg, commanding peculiar authority among the monsters. One of the demon troops, infatuated and delusional, started acting out dramatically to gain her request, further unsettling both sides. Egg paused but rapidly took advantage of the distraction. With shaking resolve, she pleaded for aid, vowing the desperate demon anything if he would guard her. The fight around them paused briefly, strain churning into uncertainty. A fierce beast under demon control lashed out, throwing its handler aside. Its screech pierced the air as turmoil opened among the soldiers. The battlefield became a mess of clashing talons and cries. Viewing the foe distracted, the king rallied his troops once more. With renewed resolve, he yelled for everybody to advance, hoping to break through and escape the scorching city before the next wave arrived. Elsewhere, Zeldin proudly described his mechanical steed to Shiromi, revealing it was powered by demonic power and built from technology of another realm. Despite the strain, she couldn't hide her awe at its work. Seconds afterward, Shiromi's calling gauge reached its peak. The device glowed brightly, signaling that the battle had come to an end for now. Ease washed over her as she realized the threat was momentarily subdued. But her ease was short-lived. From the glow appeared Same, the shark, roaring mightily yet again. Shiromi's delight pivoted into fear as the huge beast loomed over her, prepared for the next round of turmoil. Sami rumbled furiously, its form shaking with anger. Shiromi paused, unsure why her partner was so angered, but she tightened her grip on her staff. Despite her uncertainty, she steeled herself for the fight ahead. With resolve scorching in her eyes, Shiromi lifted her staff high and yelled the command to activate atomic mode. A wave of strength exploded from Sami's core, the shark's eyes gleaming like molten flames. Power rippled across the courtyard, forming a blinding wave that broke rock and cracked the air itself. The earth shook as the unleashed power built to an unbearable intensity. Zeldin recoiled in surprise, unable to comprehend the strength before him. Sami surged forth, encircled by explosive glow, its shape glowing with unrestrained rage and energy far beyond its usual might. The castle walls blazed as the shockwave destroyed everything in its road. Fire mounted toward the heavens, and the once sturdy flag of the kingdom disintegrated into ashes, marking the dawn of devastation. A huge shark exploded from the fire, its scales blackened and form steaming from strength overload. Its bellow rocked the earth, spreading waves across the battlefield as molten wreckage scattered. The air grew heavy under its presence, signaling that its energy had surpassed all limits. The creature's anger twisted further, its shape destroyed by dark power. The earth split as it thrashed violently, water and flames merging into turmoil. The narrator's tone rang a devil made from jealousy, unleashed into a realm unprepared for its wrath. A huge shark erupts from the cracked wasteland, tearing through ground and air alike. Its bellow shakes the heavens, sending waves of dust outside. The caster, stunned in surprise, realizes the beast she unleashed has grown far beyond her control. Fire rippled through her staff as she feels the wave of strength. The shark's form distorts, its scales glowing with molten power. She understands too late this is its ability to devour strength and evolve continuously. Symbols flare across a medallion as the shark activates its fresh shape, atomic mode. Its entire form ignites, radiating nuclear heat. The battlefield begins to melt around it. The foe, a horned demon engulfed in flames, bellows in outrage, his stolen fire torch within the monster. Yet he refuses to yield, vowing revenge against the gigantic predator. Both troops collide again. The demon charges, and the shark rises, jaws wide. The final clash begins. The gigantic shark's form quivered before launching a blazing orb from its jaws. Power spiraled upward, tearing through the clouds in a streak of white flames. The demon and caster looked skyward, stunned as the scorching sphere ascended higher, trailing smoke that cut through the overcast heavens. The earth shook beneath them. The orb persisted its rise, vanishing beyond the horizon. For an instant, silence ruled the battlefield, merely the fading trail marked its road. Then, glow bloomed above the stronghold. The sphere burst into a huge flare, illuminating the entire heavens like a twisted firework. Darkness extended across walls as the brightness overwhelmed view. From that glow came devastation. Numerous fragments of scorching wreckage fell like meteors, raining toward the demon below. His eyes broadened in amazement as the tempest of flames dropped upon him. The demon, angered and desperate, named upon his mechanical monster, Benny. Fire exploded from its engines as both charged through the dropping wreckage. The caster ran across the scorching earth, hardly avoiding the explosions. Beyond the battlefield, meteors streaked across the heavens toward a distant town. The tempest of devastation opened, threatening to consume everything in its road. Amid the turmoil, gigantic troops chuckled violently as they ripped through the alarmed crowd. Their chief, King Gardens, broke in anyone who dared resist, his cheers reverberating through the smoke. Two injured soldiers observed in horror as their leader barked commands to capture the surviving remaining. His rage grew, demanding revenge for their fallen allies. The forces approached mercilessly. Their grotesque cheers filled the air while civilians shrieked in horror. Above them all, the shark's scorching fragments persisted to fall, turning the city into an inferno. The battlefield fell into turmoil as a peculiar heat surged from one of the armored fiends. The creature's form convulsed, steam pouring from its mouth as its skin started to light red hot. The transformation opened rapidly. The creature's heart swelled unnaturally, power pulsing beneath its armor while surrounding troops stepped away in fear. The heat warped the air, searing everything close. A thunderous bellow came as the demon's form expanded uncontrollably. Smoke exploded from its core, and its arms twisted, destroyed by the power building within. Then came the explosion. Flames and wreckage ripped through the lines, consuming everything in a blinding flash. The crowd shrieked as the blast broke in the city plaza. Molten fragments rained down from the heavens like liquid flames. People scattered, running for their lives as the tempest of scorching shards engulfed the streets in turmoil once more. Cries filled the scorching city as the shock waves reached the outskirts. The locals gazed in horror, their eyes reflecting the turmoil consuming everything around them. Above, the shark's final wave of strength split the air. The caster looked up simply as the explosion ripped through the surviving troops. Fire exploded, scattering wreckage across the streets. The heat swept over everybody. Monsters and humans alike were caught in the inferno, some attempting to flee while rest fell under the scorching heavens. Smoke emerged, blotting out the glow. Two remaining fiends attempted to escape by air, but the fiery blast expanded, consuming their parachutes and dragging them into the fire. The city rang with their dying cries. The devastation reached a restaurant at the edge of town. The chef stood stunned as flames engulfed his shop. His sign yet read deep blue, the final remnant of a city consumed by turmoil. The demon rode his blazing machine across the ruined plaza, dodging bursts of molten wreckage. Each explosion left cracks in the rock, the aftermath of the shark's devastating strength. Close, the caster hid beneath the wreckage, shielding herself from the devastation. The heat scorched the air around her as the shark's power attacks ripped through everything without distinction. The demon steadied his vehicle, fire trailing rear as he pressed forward. Resolve blazed in his hollow eyes. He refused to yield to the turmoil. He swung his weapon through the smoke, throwing projectiles of searing flames toward the towering shark. The air ignited around them, forming a tempest of devastation. The shark bellowed once more, its form engulfed in blazing glow. Steam emerged from its scales as it absorbed the heat, readying to retaliate with immense power. The demon charged forward, his fire surging as he steered his infernal machine through the collapsing courtyard. The shark started to rise again, breaking through the earth with unrelenting power. Its huge fin breached the ground, wrapped in molten chains. The collision sent shockwaves across the battlefield, rocking the walls of the stronghold. The demon chuckled madly, his fiery chains tightening around the monster. Sparks flew as the shark thrashed, its bellows reverberating through the broken city. Fueled by rage, the demon unleashed all his power. His chains glowed white-hot, scorching deep into the creature's flesh as he poured every ounce of energy into the assault. But the shark refused to yield. With a violent wave, it broke the bindings, flames and water exploding together. The balance of strength shifted once more, neither side willing to fall. The shark convulsed fiercely, its scales cracking as molten power coursed beneath the ground. The fiery chains wrapped around its form started to disintegrate under the pressure. Fragments of the broken chains scattered through the air, turned to glowing ashes. The demon observed in amazement as his assault misplaced all effect, his weapon turning useless in his grasp. A bellow exploded from the monster as it rushed upward once more. The shockwave ripped through the courtyard, forcing the demon back while wreckage rained from above. For an instant, the two locked eyes, predator and challenger, bound by hatred and raw survival. The demon's rage blazed brighter than ever, his pride refusing to break. The shark leapt, its jaws glowing with contained flames. The demon charged to meet it, flame against flame. As the fight reached its most explosive climax, the demon stopped as the ground cracked beneath him. The shark's shadow loomed nearer, and its molten jaws glistened with unbearable heat. In an moment, the monster leapt upward, biting through the air. The demon lifted his scorching arms to resist, fire clashing against fangs as the earth exploded beneath them. Searing agony ripped through the demon's form. The shark's temperature emerged beyond reason, its flames devouring the fire meant to destroy it. The heat warped the very air around them. From afar, the caster observed in amazement. The shark's form blazed like a sun within the stronghold walls. Logic broken as the beast defied nature itself. She shook, unable to comprehend its strength. A living inferno, brighter than any flame, raged before her. The shark had transcended reason, its existence now pure devastation. In the turmoil, knowledge itself seemed to bend. A sight emerged, a cosmic hierarchy revealing the truth of all existence. At its peak stood the shark, the absolute predator, devourer of gods and beasts alike. Legends of evolution and survival flashed before their eyes. The shark's very skin adapted to withstand the heat of work, a living furnace capable of thriving in any inferno. From the ashes of numerous worlds, stories appeared of a shark that once destroyed nuclear flames and pivoted into a walking cataclysm. The myth was now reality. The battlefield quaked as Sami emerged yet again, radiating unending strength. The demon's fire dimmed under the creature's unmatched ferocity. Before the stunned foe, the truth became undeniable. Say, me, the apex of all works, stood alone, a power neither heaven nor ground could ever wish to confront. The air shook as the stronghold blazed. Zeldin crouched within the fiery turmoil, his armor melting under the heat. The caster rushed forward, shouting his title, desperation clear in her eyes. She pleaded for him to stop, but Zeldin refused, his face twisted with defiance. Even as the fire destroyed him, his will to battle stayed unbroken. The demon's form frail, yet he grinned toward the furious shark. He acknowledged the creature's might, realizing he had faced a power beyond his control. Sami started to sink back into the scorched earth, its task finished. The battlefield grew quiet as Zeldin's final salute vanished into the fire. Across the city, troops gazed in amazement. The once invincible lord was gone. Fear opened through the lines, and the forces started to retreat as the shark's legend grew stronger. The city streets filled with people rushing forward. The long silence of war shattered as shouts rang across the rock roads. Cheers exploded. The citizens lifted their hands high, celebrating victory. Smoke yet emerged from the wreckage, but delight returned to the region. Their king stood proudly among them, acknowledging the ordeal that had brought peace. He reminded his people that this triumph was not theirs alone. As the crowd calmed, he gazed toward the horizon. Gratitude filled his face. The names of their unlikely saviors Sami and Shiromi were spoken with reverence. At the gates, the two stood before the people. The huge shark rested beside its human partner, both scarred but alive. The crowd bowed in thanks, their calls of delight reverberating through the kingdom. The war was over, and the legend of Sami was made. The battlefield was peace at final. Shiromi stood beside the huge shark, tears of ease streaming down her face. They had protected the city against all odds, they had prevailed. But before she could celebrate, a sudden heat rushed through the air. She gasped, clutching her heart as the temperature around her spiked uncontrollably. The shark's form glowed brighter than before, its scales pulsing with unstable power. Radiation symbols flickered across her wand as she realized something was off. Shiromi gazed at the device in her hand. The word critical flashed across its ground. Puzzled and frightened, she pivoted toward her partner, whose power no longer seemed under control. A thunderous bellow exploded. The shark's form blazed with pure glow, rocking the ground beneath them. The people observing stopped. Victory had come at a terrifying cost. A sudden flash ignited over the city, brighter than the sun. The glow expanded rapidly, swallowing the skyline and rocking the earth beneath it. The explosion exploded outside, tearing through every building in view. Wreckage and flames rushed together, forming a wall of devastation that destroyed the streets. Seconds afterward, a huge column of smoke and flame emerged into the heavens. The blast carved through the hills, abandoning a scorching crater where the city once stood. As the fire ended, the inferno twisted upward, forming the gigantic outline of a shark. Its blazing jaws opened wide, and the realm shook under its fiery rebirth. The heavens split wide as wreckage rained down. Troops and civilians shrieked, their expressions stunned in horror. The earth rocked under their feet as something huge ripped through the clouds. Fear opened through the streets. Every eye pivoted upward, searching for the source of the devastation. Amid the turmoil, the air filled with the sound of breaking rock and collapsing roofs. At the heart of the devastation, Princess Arya stood shaking. Sweat streaked her dirt-covered face as anger blazed in her eyes. Her conjured beast, once her pride, had pivoted into a nightmare. Her tone cracked as she yelled into the wind, powerless against the turmoil she had unleashed. From the broken earth exploded the gigantic Sharkian, a gigantic being of scale and hunger. Its emergence split the ground, sending a roaring shockwave through the city. Dust swirled around its towering shape, its wide maw reflecting the horror of work gone off. The city disappeared beneath a tempest of devastation. When the smoke cleared, merely a huge crater stayed, extending continuously across the plains. Far away, untouched kingdoms observed the distant plume rise, unaware of the horror that had simply awakened. Within a distant war chamber, Leader Vasiliv heard to the shaking report through static. The officer's tone quivered as he repeated the unbelievable. The commander's breath caught. His nation had simply witnessed the birth of a catastrophe beyond comprehension. Within the vast chamber of the Holy Council, the air was tense. Messengers crouched before the assembled officers, their expressions pale with surprise. The report was brief but devastating. The royal capital of Yobong had disappeared. The assembled soldiers stopped, unable to comprehend the scope of the disaster that erased an entire kingdom overnight. Strategists and generals debated in amazement. They described the final transmissions a desperate request for reinforcements, an assault from the Demon Lord's forces, and then silence. The Yak Knight command had fallen, their banners extinguished under an unknown power. The messenger's tone shook as he described. Every sign of life, every building, had been destroyed. The castle turned to ashes, the ground scorched dark. Whatever hit the capital had done so with inhuman precision and immense strength. Fear exploded. Officers yelled theories: a fresh weapon, a demon general's curse, divine punishment. None made sense. The council's composure crumbled as fear filled the hall. Then came the final remarks, quiet but absolute. The messenger lifted his eyes, tone hollow with fear. The cause of Yobong's devastation was neither demon nor god. It was a shark, an otherworldly monster that defied all reason. The command heart exploded in uncertainty as reports streamed across the monitors. The remarks, "shark assault," flashed repeatedly, filling the chamber with amazement. Officers yelled, unsure if it was a malfunction or madness. The impossible had happened. An apex predator had become an extinction-level threat. Far away, the ocean lay peace and radiant. A maiden named Shiromi hovered serenely on the ground, unaware of the turmoil her existence had unleashed. Beneath her, the gigantic Sharkian swam silently, its shadow extending continuously through the waves. Shiromi drifted through an ethereal empty, her consciousness fading. A gentle tone rang her title, pulling her from the darkness. Lights glimmered around her, like stars in deep water, urging her to awaken. She opened her eyes to see a distant figure bathed in glow, a woman reaching out with gentle hands. The word mother slipped through her mouth, unsure but hopeful. The figure grinned, a serene, radiant woman crowned in silver. Shiromi sensed a peculiar peace. She didn't recognize her, yet the warmth in her stare moved something forgotten. The lovely stranger whispered her title again, and the empty glowed brighter. Shiromi hovered between dream and glow, the unknown woman's tone calling her back. The warmth around her started to fade as the remarks grew urgent. Someone, or something, was coming. Puzzled and drowsy, she reached out, seeking answers, but the sight collapsed before she could comprehend. A violent bellow broke in the peace. Shiromi awoke simply as the gigantic Sharkian leapt from the empty, its jagged teeth glinting like knives. The earth exploded beneath her feet as she faced the towering monster she once conjured. The creature's huge jaws clamped down not to devour, but in a nearly affectionate grip. Shiromi flailed and winced, the absurdity of the agony grounding her in reality yet again. Identifying the beast, she sighed in exasperation. The shark, her overpowered familiar, same wagged its fin playfully. Even after obliterating a kingdom, it pursued merely her attention. As waves calmed, same gazed toward the empty horizon. The wreckage of the castle were gone, erased beneath endless blue. It blinked harmlessly, as though unaware of the devastation it had created. Shiromi blinked against the blinding glow. The endless blue extended before her, peace yet unsettling. She sat on a lone rock drifting in the ocean, her tone hardly a whisper as amazement crept into her voice. The silence of the horizon offered no answers. Beside her, Same hovered cheerfully, his flippers splashing the water. Shiromi's uncertainty deepened as the shark chirped happily, unaware of the gravity of their situation. The awareness started to dawn. Everything familiar had disappeared. Her eyes broadened. There was no region, no castle, not even a sign of civilization, merely water in every direction. Her breath raced as she attempted to comprehend the impossible truth. Fear overtook reason. She shrieked into the huge emptiness while Same giggled, circling her rock with carefree delight. Their shouts rang across the waves, swallowed by the endless ocean. Same surfaced again, smiling harmlessly. His round eyes gleamed as though nothing had happened. To him this was simply another fresh realm, and to Shiromi the terrifying beginning of one. As the ocean breeze brushed her face, Shiromi's recollections started to resurface. She recalled arriving at Yobong with Egg-chan, the fight against the Demon Lord's forces, and Sama's transformation into his unrelenting shape that defeated the General Zeldan. Back then, victory had sensed splendid. Her recollection pivoted dark. The instant of triumph had been came by blinding glow. Sam had unleashed a radiance so intense it erased everything in view. That single flash had swallowed the realm. Shiromi shook as awareness hit. The devastation, the endless ocean, it was all the result of Same's immense strength. She glared at the cheerful beast bobbing before her, irritation and amazement mixing with guilt. Same chirped and bounced eagerly, urging her to play as though nothing had happened. Exhausted and misplaced, Shiromi could merely sigh, her tone cracking between fear and amazement. Then, her eyes caught a glimmer, the wand lying beside her. Resolve supplanted misery. If she could wield her magic once more, maybe she could fix the turmoil her partner had created. Shiromi scanned the endless horizon, her face tense. No islands, no ships, simply an infinite stretch of ocean. Desperation filled her tone as she questioned Same to look for region. The great shark merely surfaced cheerfully, pointing out the obvious. All they could see was ocean. Riding on Same's huge back, Shiromi gazed into the distance. The air grew yet, and even the waves seemed to pause. Beneath the sun, the creature's enormous shape drifted quietly, dwarfing the little figure resting upon it. Then, with a sudden bellow, Same's power rushed. His belly rumbled like thunder as he dove without alerting. Shiromi held to his fin, shouting his title as they plunged into the deep, the ocean exploding rear them. Seconds afterward, peace returned. Exhausted and adrift, Shiromi rested beside her partner. Hunger gnawed at them both. She murmured an apology, wishing she had at least kept her pancakes from before. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she looked into Same's steady eyes. What are you really? She wondered quietly. Once meant to be a familiar for a hero's journey, the beast had become a power that shifted worlds. Shiromi rested on the drifting rock, her energy almost gone. She grinned weakly at Same, praising him as a remarkable familiar. Despite her fatigue, she attempted to sound cheerful, pretending everything was fine. The shark chirped softly, staying close to her side. The ocean pivoted quiet under the moonlight. Same searched for meal, but the waters were empty. Shiromi's belly rumbled as she bent on his back, murmuring apologies. They hovered aimlessly beneath the huge heavens, two remaining in an endless ocean. Far away, a ship crossed the horizon. Cheers and songs rang across the waves. On board, people celebrated without care, unaware of the peculiar duo drifting close. One of the revelers jumped into the water, shouting with eagerness as he paddled toward the wide ocean. The rest applauded him on, their shouts blending with the sound of crashing waves. As the swimmer splashed farther from the ship, something huge moved beneath. The peace ocean rippled around him, unaware that his evening of celebration prepared to turn into horror. Cheers filled the air as the group on the yacht teased their friend Danny, who had dived into the ocean. The smell of grilled meal encircled them, and no one seemed worried. They yelled for him to return, unaware of the dark shape pressing beneath the ground. The evening heavens split with a thunderous sound. Waves emerged fiercely as something huge hit from below. Splintered timber rained down, the deck rocking under the power. Uncertainty supplanted cheers as the group gazed at the ruins. A bloodied figure appeared from the water, screaming for aid. The rest stopped in horror as they recognized Danny. Fear opened across the deck while he thrashed helplessly, his tone breaking in horror. From rear him, a gigantic shape surged from the waves, its jaws wide, teeth gleaming. The ocean pivoted red as the beast consumed everything in its road. The remaining shrieked as the shark's bellow rang across the water. Danny's final cry eased into silence, and the yacht drifted aimlessly. The ocean, once peace, now hid a nightmare reborn. The ocean burst in flames and turmoil. The yacht exploded as fire ripped through the evening, throwing wreckage into the air. Cries mixed with the bellow of the ocean, as the once quiet waters pivoted into a scorching grave. From beneath the waves, the gigantic shark appeared again. Its enormous jaws split the ground, swallowing everything in its road. Blood and foam churned together as the beast fed, its hunger endless and its strength unmatched. Far away, Shiromi moved on her drifting rock. The same gentle tone named her title, reverberating across the quiet ocean. She opened her eyes, dazed, the sight of a familiar glow appearing on the horizon. A woman stood on a distant buoy, her figure peace and composed. She lifted a shining pistol, her stare harsh and fixed on something unseen beyond the water's edge. Without hesitation, the woman fired. The flare streaked through the heavens and disappeared into the waves. The glow reflected off Shiromi's eyes as the ocean rippled a signal, or maybe alerting of what was to come. Shiromi gasped as glow and flames encircled her. The woman on the buoy had opened flames, igniting the ocean with peculiar power. Waves blazed like molten glass, and Shiromi could merely shriek as strength rushed through the water. The unknown woman looked peace amidst the turmoil. With a faint smile, she lifted her gun toward the heavens and spoke to Shiromi. Her remarks were gentle but clear, carrying across the scorching ocean. She named Shiromi savior. The woman's tone urged her to trust same to believe in her partner entirely. Shiromi heard in silence, her fear fading as resolve started to grow. The warmth of conviction supplanted the chill of misery. The woman extended her arm toward the horizon, vowing that a ship would soon arrive. She informed Shiromi to protect the realm alongside Same and that aid would come when wanted most. But before Shiromi could reply, the woman's shape started to fade into the mist. Reaching out desperately, Shiromi pleaded for her to stay, but the ocean swallowed the final sign of glow, abandoning her alone yet again. Shiromi gazed in surprise, realizing the radiant figure before her might be the goddess herself. Her heart raced as the woman's serene smile offered no clear answer, merely quiet mystery. Abruptly, Shiromi awoke with a start to find herself not before a divine being but face to face with a squawking seagull. The avian pecked at her head relentlessly, breaking any illusion of holiness she had left. Rubbing her head, she stopped when an unforeseen aroma drifted through the air. The smell of sizzling meal filled her senses, rich and inviting, breaking the silence of the endless ocean around her. Turning toward the scent, she noticed Same happily floating close, presenting a grill filled with perfectly cooked meal. The view was nearly too absurd to believe. Overwhelmed, Shiromi yelled in amazement while Same chirped cheerfully beside the barbecue. How the shark had succeeded to find and cook a meal stayed a mystery, but for the instant, Shiromi was simply thankful. Shiromi eagerly encouraged Same to eat beside her, enjoying the quiet instant after all the turmoil. The shark chirped happily, though its peculiar remarks left her puzzled and amused at the same time. As they shared their peculiar meal, Shiromi couldn't aid but feel thankful. She praised Same for being kind and loyal, calling it the nicest shark in the realm. The two shared a quiet bond encircled by the peace ocean. Afterward, Shiromi spoke softly to Same, recalling a dream she had. In it, a lovely woman had spoken to her, a tone that sensed divine and familiar, telling her to trust in her partner entirely. She grinned as she realized the meaning rear the dream. The woman was likely the goddess, reminding her to believe in Same and never doubt their connection. Filled with fresh resolve, Shiromi tightened her fist and announced her resolve. Even if it had merely been a dream, she sensed stronger. Same chirped proudly beside her as their next journey silently started. Shiromi gazed across the horizon with a hopeful smile. Despite being stranded, she trusted that aid and a fresh beginning was near. Same swam beside her silently, its fins slicing through the peace ocean. Determined, Shiromi lifted her fist with renewed spirit, encouraging Same to push forward. The pair resolved to face whatever awaited them together, trusting that teamwork could carry them through any tempest. Nevertheless, her optimism was interrupted by a sudden noise. Cannons thundered in the distance, and she stopped as flashes of smoke emerged on the horizon. Same cocked its head curiously, feeling peril. Then, she noticed a ship sailing straight toward them. Her eyes broadened in awareness, remembering the goddess's remarks. This was the vessel she had been promised, the one that would guide her next journey. Clutching Same firmly, Shiromi yelled for aid as the ship started to move earlier them. Wish filled her heart. It wasn't simply a dream after all. Their adventure was merely beginning. Shiromi gripped on firmly as Same rushed through the waves, chasing after the distant ship. The ocean bellowed around them, and the shark's speed left a spiraling trail in the water. Resolve filled Shiromi's heart. They couldn't lose view of their merely chance. Meanwhile, aboard the ship, the crew shifted anxiously. Their chief muttered about an unavoidable tragedy, his tone shaking. A dark presence lingered over the deck, as though fate itself was closing in. Far away, a woman in a dark hood whispered to herself, clutching a little doll. She spoke of death and devastation soon to come, her face peace yet sorrowful. The tempest of destiny had already begun.